Hello, viewers, and welcome back to the GamerCore Podcast, your one-stop location for all things video games. I'm your host, Jacob Quillen Stewart, coming at you from Kingsport, Tennessee on October 23rd, 2022. On today's episode, we're going to focus on possible career paths within the video game design industry. More specifically, we will have a clear focus on writing and storytelling within video games, the past, present, and future of this desired career, and what it takes to be a video game writer within the industry. We'll take a look at expert opinions on the job market today, as well as learn some about examples from past and present that have hustled video games into the storytelling medium. As the consumer base for video games evolve, the developers must evolve with them. Throughout the past few decades, video games have cemented themselves into the storytelling medium in incredible ways through the use of world building, exposition, and narrative level design. Long gone are the days when grinding the same levels and utilizing the same mechanics for hours was satisfying enough for a player. In this new age for the video game industry, it is important to create something unique, engaging, and inspiring to keep up with the growing consumer base. With that out of the way, let's look into how this age of video game storytelling came about. Please insert coin to continue.
In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill.
As I'm currently working my way towards a position as a video game writer, having been writing for almost a decade now and working through video game design courses for the past 3 years, I feel very in touch with how the video game consumer base is moving towards a state where narratives are the key to making a great game. There are dozens of titles across the past few decades that have influenced this rise in the storytelling medium, but a large majority of the original narrative-based games came out of the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 era of at-home consoles. Franchises like Resident Evil, Fatal Frame, and the critically acclaimed Silent Hill are well endowed into video game pop culture, not just for their horror genre, but for their atmospheric and grim storytelling that made them stand out from other popular games of the time. From the YouTube channel The Cinema Cartography, I have included a short clip from their video titled The Video Games That Changed Storytelling, as he discusses the complexity of Silent Hill 2, widely regarded as one of the best video games ever made.
A large portion of what people would say is the joy of video games is the sense of discovery they're able to instill. You are the one who is skillful enough or fortunate enough to find those areas and details that reveal something much deeper that the world has to offer. Metroid Prime offered a truly unique manner in which game narrative was to be experienced by the player. The narrative was almost completely subdued, allowing the world to unfold through the pages of lore ready to be discovered at the player's discretion, and an atmospheric infused world, insinuating through the isolation of a world that once was. This can be seen as a question of storytelling through design, which was the case for the masterpiece Silent Hill 2, offering a world built from the psychological trauma of the protagonist. A town which manifests itself as a person's greatest fear is also a masterclass in transmitting the Jungian fears of sexuality, abandonment, and suffering throughout every facet of the world.
With games like Silent Hill 2 and Resident Evil 4 being created, it ushered in a new thought process of what a video game can do and how it can make its player base feel. Silent Hill 2's unique style of world building and storytelling is substantially different from the simple platformers, shoot-'em-ups, and role-playing games players would expect from the time period. The simplistic, mind-numbing repetition the consumer base used to adore was now a thing of the past, and would bring in a new age where if a game didn't mean something or pose some kind of philosophical question, it was not worthy of being on top.
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse?
In today's video game climate, it remains much the same. Cutting-edge graphics and replayability make up for a large portion of how games are rated, but at their core, if there's not a story to make them stand out from among the crowd, they don't last long enough in the spotlight. Horizon Zero Dawn and Nier Automata are some examples of recent games that are pushing narrative storytelling as far as it can go, not only focusing on the world building and expedition of a game, but going as far as to make the soundtrack and dialogue just as meaningful to the overall themes they are trying to achieve. With so many possible routes to achieve success in video game writing, it feels like we as writers are in a choose-your-own-adventure style video game. We are given select options based off what's popular, and we have the ability to choose our own path. Will we roll with what is current and popular, or will we find our success by creating a fresh experience of currently untapped potential? In this article from Pixune.com titled The Ultimate Guide to Narrative Game Design, writer Behnam Mahfouz discusses his 5 unique considerations of writing for games. They read as follows. Number 1. Match the story with the game, not vice versa. Begin by making or working with the developers making the game in question. The game should come first, and the story should come second. When creating a game, the story is important, but making sure the game is playable and mechanics are solid will ensure that players will be interested in the first place. Creating the story before the game can make you write yourself into a corner. You must then build up the mechanics and world around you by making it match the story, which restricts core mechanics and design heavily. No one will be interested in a story of a video game unless they are presented with an enticing way through the mechanics. Number 2. Don't fall in love with your story. If you're a writer in any capacity, I'm sure you've had this drilled into your head countless times by now. For video games, it stays mostly the same, as getting too many complicated ideas into your head about the story you want to tell before creating the game will create strenuous crunches on the art and design team to make sure it matches your image rather than focusing on the core mechanics. Games will go through significant changes during the production, so getting too attached to the original draft will only drag the game down as a whole. Number 3. Good game stories are flexible. All good game stories that matter are convertible, mutable, capable of taking many forms. Having your game story be adaptable to multiple mediums ensures that it is a story that is well thought out and worth telling. It needs to be simple enough to be well adaptable to multiple scenes and art styles, but complex enough to make it unique and stand out. It creates a healthy balance of familiarity and obliviousness as a player can get interested in what they do understand as well as what they do not. Number 4. Start your game story with a single emotion. Not every video game can be as complex, emotion-filled, and triumphant as Nier Automata or Silent Hill 2. Beginning your video game writing journey by attempting to only portray one emotion throughout your game will ensure that it is a plausible topic and can be well adapted. From that point, you can focus all your efforts into crafting something unique about that one emotion. Rather than keeping the players questioning the emotions they felt, it will make the player question the emotions of the game as a whole. Number 5. Experiment before committing. Nobody makes a masterpiece on their first attempt. There will be dozens of failures before you can create your magnum opus, so the point of writing is to keep attempting. Experiment with what works and what doesn't. Get peer feedback and find out what your strengths and weaknesses are in writing. You're going to be able to produce a lot better story if it's designed and fine-tuned through the production process than if you'd already begun the story.
Initiating System 1.
Those tips from Behnam Mahfouz are sure to give aspiring writers some help in creating stories for video games, but that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to working in the actual industry. In an article published on GameIndustry.biz titled How to Get a Job as a Game Writer, Marie Delisandre lines out the best ways to acquire a job within the industry. She recommends building a portfolio early full of writing samples. The more you write, the more you'll have to pick from when it comes time to build a portfolio. It's best to practice with all sorts of writing techniques, dialogue, exposition, and world building. Being proficient in all categories will help make you equipped for any job, but it is also important to find your niche and discover what you write the best for. It's also important to publish these stories and get your name out there. She also recommends making playable content. The more you learn about a game design as a whole, the more likely you are to secure a job within the industry. Coding, modeling, acting, designing, conceptualizing, and writing all go in together to make a great experience for the player. And learning the basics within each of these facets will make you a necessary tool within any design team. Familiarize yourself with current softwares like Unreal Engine 5 or the Unity engine to understand what all work goes into making a great game. Understanding the limitations of each software will help improve your writing as well, and help understand the difficulty and strain writing can put on design teams. There are many different cliques, companies, and studios your work can contribute to, and work environments for each of those will be completely different from one another. There's also the question of if you want to work for a low-budget, self-influenced indie studio or want to lend your talents to a AAA large-budget company. Indie game design in the past decade has skyrocketed to the top of many players' watch list. The stories indie developers are putting out have begun to rival even those of AAA studios. When working for an indie studio, there are significantly less limitations to creativity that you might find for a large corporation. Indie development allows creators to create exactly what they envision at their own pace, not subject to massive crunch times you might find at larger companies. However, this creative freedom does have the issue of being severely underfunded. When working for a company, you will gain benefits and perks not found at many indie studios. You will work with a team of writers to create a large, highly funded project that could scope years in the making. You may not be able to create your story, but you will play a large part in making sure the story of the overall game is told well. Indie development has hit such a high in recent years that I predict within 5 to 10 years it will rival AAA studios not only narratively, but graphically and mechanically as well. It is a very interesting time to put yourself into the writing side of video games, as there are so many different routes to go, each of them with their own strengths and weaknesses, and I can only imagine the number will grow as the term indie is currently being redefined non-stop. With the production of AI technology within recent times, in the future there may not even be a need for artists or writers in the video game field. If technology can create stories and art based off existing success, what is the point of having to pay workers to achieve the same outcome?
System 1 loaded.
To help prepare for this changing climate within the industry, it is important for video game writers to continue improving and become the best they can be within their given fields. It is necessary to make companies understand how irreplaceable you are within your creative talents. For people approaching or just getting into the industry, practice, practice, practice. You will never achieve anything in writing unless you continuously work on improving yourself and your writing abilities. Continue to play video games, maybe even examples I've provided within the podcast that will help you understand how much effort goes into every minute detail of the writing process. It is important to familiarize yourself with what is popular now so that you might predict what will be popular in the near future. To sum it all up, we've taken a look at what makes a good writer, what makes a good game designer, and how to improve both abilities to maintain a position at the company or studio you choose to work for. We've discussed past and present examples of good video game stories and how those will eventually impact the future of the medium as a whole. And most importantly, we've covered how you can further yourself within the industry and make yourself known. Continue working hard to accomplish your goals, and remember to always practice as much as possible. This has been Jacob Quillen Stewart of the GamerCore Podcast, now signing off. Game over.
Game